One of the most popular and recognisable amp families just got a new member. Let's check out the Boss Katana Mini X. The Boss Katana needs absolutely no introduction. It is one of the most popular amps in the world, and certainly Guitar, we are, recommending them to lots and lots of customers and certainly selling a lot here as well. I figure that I actually learned from the guys over at Boss that something like every 6 minutes a Katana is sold in the world, which, to be honest, I can totally believe that now. There's a lot in the line when it comes to the Katana, and there is already a Mini in that line, their little desktop style amp, which is super, super fun. But what this is that we're looking at today is a total upgrade on that amp. Now, it's not going to replace the Mini. You can still totally get that, but what this does is it adds a couple of features that sort of bridges the gap between this and the full Katana. And there's a couple of features in this that I'm particularly excited about and I think is really, really cool. So let's just jump right in and get some tones out of this. So if you're familiar with the Katana at all, you'll probably recognize some of these channels and some of these features. There's 3 channels on the Katana Mini X. You have a clean, the crunch, and the brown, and each of those has a variation switch that was introduced in the Gen 2 Katana. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick this off with the clean. Let's just hear some tones. I'm going to kind of switch to some single coil sort of sounds on this as well, just so we can get a full feel for it. Nothing scarier to me than a dry, clean tone there. So let's maybe stick a little bit of ambience on that. Much like the other Katana, it's full of effects, and actually compared to the other Katana Mini, which only had a kind of tape style delay on it, this has got a lot more going for it. So even just starting on the reverb and the delay side of things here, there's quite a few to choose from. We have just a standard reverb here. Probably call that like the kind of hall reverb style, and then it does have a spring as well. Just getting a little bit more of that sort of like, obviously spring style sort of wetness, I'd probably call that there. Now, depending on where you obviously lie that in the kind of small sections, if you could just see those there, that's going to depend on how much of the actual effect you're going to be getting. So down there, a little bit less than if you were going to be up there. Obviously, it's sounding a bit kind of more full. We have a delay. And then we have a combination of the delay and reverb together, which was the effect that I was using in the intro sound, and this is probably the one I would be using the most. Now there are a few more effects on here as well. As you would imagine, there are your kind of standard modulation with the chorus, a phaser, a tremolo, which I guess you can call the holy trinity of modulation there. Getting that kind of G-C kind of jazz chorus vibe off of there. We have a phaser. And then onto the tremolo as well. And that's about as much as that as I'm going to play before we get demonetized on this video. That can vary the speed depending on where you put it in the small section that it's got as well. Now it has a couple of other effects on here that I think are really, really cool. Now this is a T-wah, it says a T-wah on the actual options there. And what I actually think it does is it is like a sort of like touch defined wah. So kind of the harder you play into your guitar with your dynamics, the more you're going to get kind of like an auto wah sort of feature. So if I play nice and delicately, which is quite cool, you know, it's definitely a sort of like quite specific effect, and you would need to set it to where you would need to in terms of the speed of the wah, but I mean, to get that sort of auto wah sound without having to use like obviously a pedal or anything, super cool. Now this next section here is called Def, D-E-F on the actual options, and what it is like a D fretter. Now this actually does work a little bit better with bass, which I'm going to kind of demonstrate a little bit just because there's a couple of features in here that make this amp usable on bass and acoustic, which is just by using the variation switch there, because each of the channels have got like almost a second channel with them, and with the clean, the variation is actually a completely flat response, which great for bass, great for acoustic guitar. But what it does on electric here, so it's a bit subtle, but it's kind of got like, it's meant to emulate a sort of like a no fret guitar, which it does sound a little bit better with bass, which will show a little bit later. And the last one, which is, well actually the last two, sorry, which we have a synth in here, which Boss have been, they've made the SY1 and a few other effects recently as well, which this is just loads of fun. It's almost kind of like a ring modulator sort of sound there, and it does also have an octave in it as well. Which will kick that on with a bit of distortion actually, which is a great opportunity for us to move over to our crunch. So here's it still with that octave on there. So that's with the octave there. Now let me not be so scary anymore, and let me put just a little bit of reverb on here so I'm not playing with a completely dry signal. So moved over to the crunch, which actually before I do, there's one thing I just want to show you, which actually on the clean channel here, So if you kind of dime the gain a little bit on there, you can actually get it into a kind of crunchy territory, which let me just make sure I'm not absolutely blasting the levels here. That is just the clean, and if I move over to the crunch but have the gain quite low, you're gonna... It's almost kind of like they cross over that little bit, which is quite cool because it means that all the channels are somewhat connected there. But let's dime the gain a little bit and show you how much we can actually get out of this crunch channel. Sounds absolutely great. Now let's check the variation on that as well there. A little bit more kind of like searing out of that second variation, but if we're talking searing, we're going to be wanting to go over to that brown channel, which is that very synonymous with the Katana high gain channel. Plenty of gain on tap there, and again, that's one of the kind of most surprising things I found about this amp, is that despite it being a really small size, this thing is like really, really loud, and it pushes quite a lot, because what you find with obviously like smaller speakers and whatnot, you're not going to get as much of the full frequency because it's just the nature of having smaller speakers on amplifiers, whereas this does sound really, really cool. Like I'm not feeling like it's limited by its size in any sort of way. And then of course, you know, when we're on those big kind of like distorted channels as well, throwing a big octave on there, and we're absolutely having fun for days here. tons of combinations for you to mess around with. Now, some of the new additions to this amplifier as well, as opposed to the other Mini, so this is actually a wooden cabinet that comes on this little tiny amp, which does actually make quite a big difference to the resonance of it. It has got a tuner built into it, which is really, really handy, especially if you're using this for traveling, which actually it's totally battery powered and rechargeable with a USB-C. You're going to get about 10 hours of battery life out of this. So this is great if you just want this like as a desktop amplifier, if you want this as a travel amplifier. And if you are using this as a desktop or a travel, the record out here, so this is either a headphone slot, which, you know, comes in really handy, but then also you can take just your jack out of there, a 3.5 jack, and actually record out of this, because it is also a cab emulation too. Super, super handy if you want to be laying demos down, or even, you know, recording this straight to your phone or anything as well, which such a handy little feature. And, you know, I did mention that I was going to plug a bass into this. Luckily, I have a nice bass 6 here, so I'm not going to feel too out of place, because this has got 6 strings on it. And I'm not a main bassist, certainly myself, but this is quite a cool little feature, because, you know, you can obviously play a little bit of bass on it as well. If it was actually in tune when I first got it as well, but this is a handy time for me to show you. The tuner function there does actually work on bass, and it's just this little section here. So if you don't have your clip-on tuner, you're totally fine. There we go, that's as much as I need. I just need the 2 strings. I do apologise to all the bassists over there. It's not my main instrument, shall we say, but here's that D fretter as well. Which, just tons of options in here, which is one of the cool things. You know, you can, if you are a multi-instrumentalist, you can lay down a full demo just with this. Say you've got your bass, you've got your guitar, you can just use this for everything. That's obviously going to free up the DSP on your computer if you are going to be laying down any demos, which I know it can be a bit of a hassle when you're doing that and your computer starts to sort of chug up a little bit. So now that I've shown you my mediocre bass skills there, who would I say the Katana Mini X is for? Now, certainly if somebody doesn't already have a practice or a little desktop amp or anything like that, this is an absolutely superb option, because it does come with obviously a lot of sounds in it, a ton of effects already built in, and definitely it's not going to take up too much space in your house if you need to kind of move it around or anything like that as well. But actually, I think beginners will get a lot out of this as well. It's not a full-size amplifier. Certainly, from my experience in working in the stores, you know, bigger amps can be quite sort of intimidating to a beginner, not just because of their size, but you know, there's a lot of options on there. And this kind of bridges that gap just that little bit, because it does have like the full EQ, it does have some of the effects and whatnot, but it does give you a lot of opportunity to experiment with sounds and tones, all while, you know, having headphones on it as well. And then of course, you know, just anybody who's doing any traveling, like I said, this is not the biggest of amps, and it only comes in at about 2.7 kilograms as well, so you're not going to have too much of a hassle getting about with it. It's definitely, you know, it's not as like sleek and kind of small as some of the other ones, so you may need to, you know, carry it or have it in a slightly bigger bag, but that's where I think this is being added to the lineup of the Katana is really handy, because again, it's not going to be replacing the Mini. So if you do just need a little bit more than that, then do check out the Mini X. But what do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments. Are you a Katana player yourself? I would like to know. And while you're down there, give us a like and a subscribe, because you can keep up with all the latest news at Guitar HQ. But until next time, I've been Kieran, and this has just been a very quick look at the brand new Boss Katana Mini X. Have a great day.